just now realized that next door, there's a guy that does our podcast. And sometimes he has the music up really loud because he's doing the cutting and everything. So let me know.
We'll take it. I'll love it. If we get music in here from next door, it adds a little spice to the mix. But look at us. I decided to wear my blue shirt, have my orange background. You've got the orange and blue rocking as well. We're all ready to go here.
Awesome. Watch this. 1 second. Let me show you something. Look what I got with me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I got inducted into the all-time into the top 100 Denver Broncos.
Man, you don't need them gloves. Those hands are good enough.
You know what? I'll ask the fan why they sent them to me the other day. Then
right. Just like
here. You recording this?
I mean, I'll cut this part out. But
actually, you know what? I was gonna say, watch this. I'll just throw them away.
All right, there it is. There it is. Right, nothing better than the mitts God gave you. Oh man, I love it. Well, how are you?
I'm blessed, man. Just here at the America's Rehab Campus, this is where I work at, and just got done meeting for breakfast with a couple clients. So this is just what I do, man. Every single day, I just give God praise.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I've been looking forward to this conversation this entire week. And I mean, I got to say, like, you know, as someone who live in Colorado, huge Broncos fan, my dad played college ball with John Elway. And so I've been very closely knit to their family, throughout the years. And at least when I was a kid, my claim to fame is we're at a family picnic with them. And I don't think I've ever spoken about this on a podcast before. We're at a family picnic with them, and they had a ping pong table, and it was my family, his family, and then there was one other family that was there, another guy who played at Stanford with the group, and John and the other guy are playing ping pong. And I made the dumb decision as like a 3-4-year-old walking by the ping pong table and took a backhanded paddle to the back of the head by John. Every time I saw him from that point forward, he's always like, "How's your head, buddy?" And I was just like, "Look, man, we can let it go. It's been a long time." I've recovered.
And the reason why he asked you that, by the way, is because he knows, because I was one of his wide receivers, he knows that whenever we get hit in our head, we deal a lot with concussions, and we care about those guys because we know sometimes their memory loss goes. So that wasn't necessarily about you. He was just letting you know that he cares about what you went through.
Yes, 100%. And then he goes from the caring side to the very competitive side, because his son went to Cherry Creek, and me and my brother, we went to Fairview High School, which is in South Boulder. And when we were all still in the Metro League, when we were playing against each other, it went from, hey, how's your head? Blah, blah, blah. And then he's just like, "Hope you're ready. We're about to whoop your ass." And I was just like, all right, man, I guess the formalities are over with.
It's interesting because whenever I do interviews, I always let people know how much John Elway cared about the fans and the people that lived in Colorado, even more than he cared about himself when he's out there. That's why he's still in Colorado.
I love it. Nothing better than, you see so many athletes these days who are becoming more and more, and John and some of the, some players from the 90s and 80s and stuff like that, like the ones who get really ingrained with the culture of a team and really the fabric within a city, they're special, right? They all hold a very special piece in our hearts. And you start seeing nowadays some you see more and more younger athletes who are coming out at the college level, who are starting to say, I am and have been and I want to continue to be a part of the fabric of this team, this culture, this city. And it's a beautiful thing, especially when, as an athlete, how much that you give to a team, to an organization, a program, whatever that might be. And the fans are starting to notice that more and more, especially because they're starting to understand how much athletes have to give. And obviously, for someone like yourself, how much you give back, and how much you give to a team and an organization, and now how much you want to give to people. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, and I'll say this too, by the way, because I've been visiting Colorado quite a bit. In fact, I'm flying out there coming up this next weekend, and I really wish the ball players, though, would give more back to the community, because we're finding out that there are a lot of people, especially in Colorado, who are not only homeless, but really trying to survive, especially during these unprecedented times. And that's the reason why when I share my testimony, I love calling the old Vance out, because I wish I cared more about the people that were homeless and didn't have anything back in the day when I was that famous guy. That's how much I love Colorado. I call Colorado home to this day, even though I live in Arizona where I grew up at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, everybody's dealing with it in some way, shape, or form. And Colorado's been hit, oddly hard over the past few years, not only from the pandemic, like everybody has, but the fact that there are so many companies that are moving from out of state, the California, the Washington, tech companies, other places like that, that are moving out here and starting to bring more and more talent from, places that you have to have $120,000, $130,000 to live a median lifestyle.
Yeah.
Are coming out here to Colorado, and so people are coming in. The housing market has been insane out here. A lot of locals are getting priced out of opportunities that otherwise, would be totally fine for them to, because people can come in, and to other people outside of Colorado, everything seems a lot cheaper here. But if you're a Coloradan, everything seems like inflation's going through the roof, and really it's just kind of catching up.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because again, I'm connected with a lot of people. In fact, I just talked to a pastor last night who has a mega church out there, and he was talking about how the price is just going up so much for people that live in Colorado. And like you said, it's because the rich people that are moving out of California and different parts of the country are coming to Colorado. So now Colorado's able to raise the prices.
Yep, 100%. And it puts a lot of pressure on, obviously, hey, if you're a realtor, do you start to, and if you've been a part of Colorado, do you discriminate at all, trying to, see if there are people within Colorado who you want to try and protect and help the people who are currently here and not get priced out of certain homes? Or do you want to take top dollar from other people who are coming from out of state? I mean, it's creating a lot of pressure from a lot of different people. And I think athletes as a whole, and it's weird, you can talk about real estate, and then you could talk about how athletes and sports teams might be able to even influence and impact some of that stuff. And it's amazing the long arm reach that sports, especially a place like the Denver Broncos, the whole organization, the amount of impact that they can create, the
Yes.
opportunities that they can create is just it's amazing. And it's amazing sports state too, with the Avalanche just winning the Stanley Cup. The history of the Rockies, they're not doing so great this year, but they go through, every team goes through ebbs and flows. And the Nuggets being in the playoffs as well. Broncos obviously ain't no team that's a slough, never has been, never will be. Too much pride, too much hardworking types of athletes come here. And the fans obviously support like there's no tomorrow, but they also demand a lot from the athletes who are part of the organization, which we'll get into a little bit about how some of your journey and some of that plays into a little bit of what you've gone through and where you're at now. But we've done a lot of talking. I've done zero introduction here. I would love to obviously introduce an incredible special guest. I'm honored, to say the least, that I have the opportunity to be able to speak with you. This is Vance Johnson. If anybody has taken away anything from the conversation so far, Vance is an Arizona kid, went to the University of Arizona. I was at CU in the Pac-12, played there. So very familiar with the Wildcats in the organization that they have there. Also, a lot of people don't know this, but you were a world-class long jumper. You're an NCAA champ, gold medalist at the Junior Pan Am Games. So an athlete through and through. And from there, obviously, after Arizona, went to the Broncos, and you played, your entire career really for the Denver Broncos, being a part of the famous Three Amigos, and having outstanding performances in tons and tons of different games. You still hold some franchise records. So you've given so much to such an amazing program, but you've also, throughout the entire journey, you've had your own ebbs and flows. You've had challenges, you've had struggles, and you actually have a recent book that has come out, which I definitely want to roll the red carpet out for. Stick around to hear more about this at the end. A new book called Uncovered, which is the 12 yards between rock bottom and recovery. And it's really detailing out your struggle with addiction, your journey to sobriety, and your ongoing path in life thereafter, and what you're doing now, which I'm really excited to dive into a little bit. But all I can say is thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for the intro. And I'll have a little bit of time because where I'm living at now, I'm just about helping people, not even just here, but all over the country get into treatment. So it's really good to be on with you. And I love the history that you talked about. You reminded me of so many different things. In fact, I literally just yesterday, and I'm going to be posting this on my social media, I saw an interview that the Three Amigos had back in the day when I was trying to encourage people, even though behind the scenes I was trying to encourage kids not to use drugs back in the day. So I'll get back into that too with my testimony. But you sure are bringing a lot of memories about Colorado and even your history with growing up around John Elway. And so thanks for inviting me on. I'm excited about this opportunity to do an interview with you, man.
Of course. Anybody who, growing up with, the 90s era for the Denver Broncos was a very, very special era, really the end of the 80s and all throughout the 90s. Very, very special era. A lot of incredible human beings, a lot of incredible individuals. Anybody who's a fan obviously knows that entire era of football. It was a very special era and so many memorable moments. But I would love to take a little bit of a step back and just talk about sports as a whole. Like, what got you interested in football? I've talked to plenty of people who are like, I didn't want to do football, I was forced into it, or it was natural for me. Or, how did sports as a whole start, and what got you involved with football as a whole?
Well, how I started out playing football, guys, is when I was a young kid. I actually was dealing with a lot of trauma. I grew up in New Jersey. Well, I'm sorry, I was born in New Jersey, but I grew up in Arizona. But I grew up in a childhood where my father was very abusive and alcoholic and did drugs back in the day and was abusive to my mom. So my struggle mentally would cause me as a child even to run away from home sometimes, even having suicidal thoughts. And the only time I found myself having any happiness or joy was when I would be watching television and watching sports, thinking somehow, man, look at all the people cheering for those famous ball players. And I can even name some of those ball players that I wanted to grow up to be like when I was a child. So that's the only time I had any joy and happiness, is whenever I was participating in sports. And that father I told you guys about, the only thing I would say that he did good when I was a kid was he would make me go to bed at 8:30 every night. And before I went to bed, he would make me run at least 2 blocks, if not sometimes 20 to 30 minutes. And then he would make me wake up every morning at 5:30 a.m. so I could do my push-ups and work out. And then he became one of my coaches. So that's one good thing I will say about my dad, is he always made me do the right thing when it came to sports when I was a child. And football is where I got really happy at. And then having different coaches back in the day, they almost became like dads to me, because a coach is going to tell you the right play. And that's the reason why I'm just excited about this interview, because I'll tell you how we can end up running the wrong play when nobody's paying attention, because we're doing it our own way. But as a child, it was always about sports. And that's how I became one of the best here in Arizona. In fact, I started representing the United States of America, even when at the Pan American Games, the gold medal for the long jump for America when I was a kid.
Yeah. And you find so many people using sports, and especially, sometimes it's parents wanting their kids to have an outlet to be able to go and, just go get some energy out, go and be social, go and do a number of things. But then you obviously, someone like yourself, you went into sports and you found the sense of, it sounds like almost like an escape in some ways, where you were like, this is a place where I can go and I can start to form a little bit of a legacy. I can have some fun with it. For me, it's an escape. So when you started to go into sports and you started to have a little bit of a talent for all these things, you realized, oh, I can be really good at this. Talk me through some of that early mindset, right? Like, you start realizing you have some potential that you can actually tap into. What happens to the mindset during that time for you?
That's a very good question. In fact, and that's a part of my testimony when I travel around the country sharing it. I always tell everyone, my childhood, thinking sports somehow was going to actually achieve an identity rather than, just the goals. So to me, when I was doing sports and I was winning and I was making touchdowns and winning track meets and long jump, and I just felt like, you know what, this is who I am. And so thinking somehow I was going to achieve an identity by being famous and saying that when I get to the top of the ladder, I'll finally make it. And that's why I tell people it's like climbing to the top of a ladder. When you get to the top, the only place to go is where? Down. And unfortunately, and I'll get to this part of my testimony, but when I got to the top of that ladder as that Denver Bronco, I didn't realize that after my career was over with, I was not going to just climb back down the ladder, but I was going to jump off head first. So a lot of athletes are struggling these days. And in fact, I just got a phone call from another Denver Bronco that another one of our Bronco, not necessarily teammates, but played after us, actually ended up dying. And you can Google that and do some research, but it's really unfortunate what's happening to these ball players. So that's why I like to encourage those guys. You can, achieve goals, but don't look for that being your identity. Do you know the percentage of college football players that make it to the NFL?
Minimum, like 1% or less.
1%.
Yeah.
So thinking somehow that was going to be my identity. And as I get into that part of my testimony, you'll see I was wrong in my head. I should have just been doing it to achieve a goal, knowing that I was at least going to be able to go out there and have a good time doing sports because it was something that I had a gift at, that I was going to be able to go out and perform and do well. But unfortunately, after our careers are over with, and I get calls almost on a weekly basis from ball players around the country who are struggling after their careers are over with.
Yeah. Now, so you come out of Arizona, you're going into the NFL. Talk to me about those intro years to the NFL, because these are some of the hardest times. You talk to anybody who's a rookie, right? You go in, your rookie contract is cut up to bits because everybody's taking, percentages and all that other stuff. You got to help out your family. You got to make sure your agent's paid. You got to make sure this. Rookie contracts can almost seem like, for some people, it's minimum, right? It's the bare minimum to keep you alive through a certain period of your career. And everybody fights for that second contract. It's a very difficult time, to say the least, for a lot of athletes who are part of that 1% of all college athletes in whatever discipline that they're in, whatever sports it is. But we're talking about football here. That rookie contract is so difficult in terms of getting past that, because most people only spend about 2.5 years in the NFL. That's the average length of a career. Talk to me about how you went through that period, because it's not easy for anybody. How did you get through it?
First I want to say this to your listeners. This guy has a lot of wisdom, because the very question he's asking is another part of my testimony, and him and I haven't had a conversation until today. So I really appreciate your wisdom and the questions you're asking, because you really care about the listeners. And to jump right into that, when I got drafted, because I grew up in an atmosphere where I didn't even know how to save money, I didn't even have a bank account. I literally signed on with an agent because he ended up buying me an expensive Porsche back when I was in my early 20s. And so I signed a contract with him. And do you know, he ended up ripping me off from everything that I made when I was a Denver Bronco my first year when I got my signing bonus. So I found out that he had taken all of my money out of my bank account and told me, oh, don't worry, Vance, I bought some property up in the Ohio area, and we're going to actually end up selling it to some people over in China, and then you're going to be a multimillionaire. And then I found out that he pretty much told me, no, we lost everything. Sorry, you don't have any more money. And then I end up actually struggling, because in the checks that I would get either ripped off by people who were asking me for money. Like you said, family members were always asking for money. I had to buy Super Bowl tickets whenever I went to the Super Bowl for family members. And so I pretty much stayed broke. I did buy a house for $400,000. And you made a comment about how the prices are going up. Guess how much that house that I bought for $400,000?
Oh, it's got to be worth $2 to $3 million now.
You took the words out of my mouth. And I just found that out not too long ago, how much it was really worth. And it was a little over $2 million.
Yeah, which shows, like, I mean, everybody who's sitting here thinking $400,000, oh my gosh, that's nothing today. That's like a 1-bedroom apartment. But the thing is, like, that's just in terms of how much that was for you, right? For anybody who's who's playing in the early 90s, late 80s, like, that's a lot of money. Lot of money.
But the other thing, real quick, I started doing, guys, is I started because I grew up around this as a child. I started gambling, and I would fly out to Las Vegas after every football game. In fact, Vegas would fly me out there, and I would lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. In fact, one time I lost $86,000 in less than 20 minutes. And there's at one time, and I won't name the hotel, but I was held hostage out there by the hotel because they had given me the money to gamble, and the Broncos had to pay them $200,000 to let me leave Las Vegas. This is what happened to me on a weekly basis. So what you guys saw on the football field when I was making touchdowns and doing all this, throwing my hands up and getting everybody cheering for me off the field, I was struggling and I was getting ripped off. And then I started having relationships where I would get married only for a couple months. and I'd have to pay between $6,000 and $12,000 a month in support to my ex-wife. So I pretty much struggled my entire career. And the only time I was happy, guys, is when I was on the football field.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting segue because so one of the things that I notice a lot when it comes to performance, right? People can be performing at an incredibly high level, and people think, oh, well, this person, they can only be on top of the world because the world markets them as kind of like a hero, someone who has their whole world together. They're doing things the right way. And obviously you have youth, college coaches, high school coaches, they're telling them, hey, Vance Johnson, helped the team make it to 3 different Super Bowls. Like, you think he's out here doing XYZ? No, he's doing the right things. He's doing everything perfectly. Like, he's making sure he's staying hyper disciplined. And what people don't realize is that when it comes to performance, if you want to be the best, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes in order to be able to get there. That's table stakes.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I'm having some issues with our country these days, because to me, I'd rather have a leader that's out there telling our country what to do and telling other countries around the world, if you don't do the right thing, we're going to take you out. Because you know what? When I was in the huddle with John Elway would call the play, and this is the second half of the game, and he would tell the receiver that he was going to plan on throwing the ball to, if you don't catch this ball, you're going to get cut. And guess how many of those guys ended up getting cut? I played 10 years, so I can't even tell you how many. But you have to run the right play when you're out there on the field. And it's not just on the field, but off the field when you're at practice. And that's the reason why I cared so much about John Elway, because he really cared a lot about the ball players. Yeah. It will make us show up maybe sometimes 2-3 hours before we even had practice, because he wanted to go out there and make sure we were running the right play. And that's why Dan Reeves, when he was my coach, he was like a father to me, because he knew I struggled with my addictions. And so he would call me over to his office sometimes at 5:30 a.m. just to spend time with me. And they would bring me in 2-3 hours prior to the game sometimes, guys. And this is how transparent I am, because they would have to give me different types of meds to almost detox me. And I would go into the bathroom sometimes, because sometimes I'd have to take a urine test, and I'd take one of my teammates in there, and I won't tell you how much I gave them, and I'd have them go ahead and urine in the cup. So this is how transparent your boy Vance Johnson is. And I just need to be honest with you.
It shows that, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's an organization or a person. Sometimes performance can look ugly, right? Like, what people see are the highlights, the stuff that's all over the news. They make someone look like a hero, all these other things. But when it comes to how things are actually done, the behind the scenes work, it can be pretty tough for a lot of people to be able to visualize and be able to understand, which is why your transparency is so incredibly it's admirable, to say the least, because there's a lot of people who would not be in that position. And the fact that I mean, you're coming in and the team even knows some of these things, and they're there wanting to support you and say, hey, how do we work with this? Whereas you see a lot of people today have a little bit of a no tolerance policy, and it just shows different era of football. They see, they saw an amazing talent in you and wanted to work with you and try and help you, or if anything, deal with some of the things that come with a certain type of athlete. In today's game, and I'm curious about this, in today's game, if you were introduced to this same scenario, dealing with the same issues and other stuff like that, do you think you would have had the career that you would have had?
That's really interesting. Today, I'm a different person. So being a man of faith, I would see things a whole different way. And I wouldn't be so glorifying to Vance Johnson, but I would be just glorifying the God that I worship every single day. Yeah. So today what I do is, and I'm actually even hooked up with a number of NFL ball players. I was a uniform inspector out at the Raiders Stadium for 2 years, actually. And so I've got some behind the scenes things that were happening there that I'm not able necessarily to share. But I will say that, to this day, ball players, I would encourage moms and dads, when you raise your kids, to just really educate them and show them what they need to do when they become that famous athlete, so that they can know how to save their money, so they can know that there's a future after their career, and the career is only going to last for maybe between 2 and 5 years at the most. And I don't know if you've done some research, but the majority of, and I forgot what that number is, but a number of those ball players end up filing bankruptcy within 2 years after their career is over with. Yep. So it really is important when those guys are on the field to care about them and just educate them as much as possible. If you're related to an NFL ball player or even a Major League Baseball player, or someone's playing professional golf, so that they would know that the money that they're making, they need to learn how to save.
Yeah. And this is a very interesting topic, just because, I mean, you talk about like really the whole financial entirety of an athlete. And there was an interview, I think, done with the Players Tribune, I want to say, and it had Clinton Portis and a few other people talking about financial literacy, and they had a financial planner who was there with them and talking about the things that they wish that they knew. When it comes to, in the term that I heard, which was from John Embry, he was my college head coach, obviously tight ends coach for, the San Francisco 49ers, incredible individual, has been all over the NFL, amazing human being. He said average time in the NFL is about 2.5 years. And most people come out about $200,000 to $300,000 in debt.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's
Wait
very
a second. Interesting you said that, because I ended up filing bankruptcy myself. So thank you so much for your knowledge, man.
Of course. I mean, these are all things that, when you hear them from people who have been around the league and all these different things, those are the things that really stick with you. And what comes out a lot from places like the NFL is, number one, hey, you're going to be struggling a lot with your body. I mean, my dad played 3 years in the league. He played 2 years with the Bills, 1 year with the 49ers. He's had 13 knee surgeries. The man has not been able to straighten his legs for quite some time. And, fortunately, that was it that he had to deal with. But there are people who deal with way worse, whether it's, they're struggling with addiction, or they're struggling financially, or their body's in a place where they can't do anything. Or their mental state is in a place where things are not going so well. But you think about the longest offered resource in the NFL is someone who is a financial investor or financial planner. Whenever rookies come in and their preseason and stuff, they have all these financial guys come in and start talking about, hey, leave your money with me. I will be able to help you. But they don't bring in resources, or I should say, until recently, they only started bringing in resources about caring about the holistic person. People like performance mindset coaches and not therapists, because 99% of everybody who makes it to the NFL, hell, who makes it to NCAA, is a very high functioning individual with a very high tolerance for adversity. More often than not, they're probably not dealing with things like depression or suicide. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it means that more often than not, they're able to push through a whole lot more. But only until recently were they able to have performance mindset coaches come in and actually start talking to them and say, hey, you're not broken. You're someone who needs to just be coached in the mental side of life just as much as you are in the physical side from sports. And a lot of times these positions have fallen on coaches who become kind of second fathers to a lot of these athletes, helping them work through some of the issues that they have off the field and other things like that. But the question I want to ask you is really coming down to the resources you had available to you while you were playing. Did you utilize them? How did they help? What are things that athletes should be concerned with nowadays with the resources that are out there and what they should be utilizing?
Well, to this day, there are a number of resources out there for athletes throughout their career, and especially now, even after my career. But the problem is when you got a 20-year-old, between 20 and 25-year-old playing in professional sports, they're not telling the truth. A lot of us, and I was one of those guys, I was not willing to let my coaches and let the people know that I needed help, because you know what's going to happen if they find out that you got a problem? You're eventually going to get cut.
Yep.
And that's whether you're a good ball player or not. And when you had mentioned something about your father's injuries and how he had a lot of operations, I had over 20 operations. And to this day, I struggle with lots of pain. And I used to be addicted to painkillers back in the day too, but I don't have my posterior anterior cruciates. I don't have kneecaps. I had one of my ankles that was actually twisted and broken, and they ended up having to put a new ankle on. I have a plate with 14 screws on it. I have my pectoral muscle was ripped off. I had 3rd-degree separation on both my shoulders. So I've had lots of injuries, and I also suffer with CTE, and I don't remember a lot of things. So sometimes people have to bring back memories so that I can remember those things. Otherwise, I don't. Even getting back here to Arizona after 30 years, I didn't remember how to get around the places that I used to go to school and used to live at back in the day. That's why I'm glad they got Google Maps. So I even signed a contract that when I donate my brain X amount of $1 million is going to be going to my family members when I die. That's how real it is.
Golly, man, it's heavy, right? If you're an athlete, it's a reality check. And the thing is, there are so many athletes who, and you said this so well, you don't realize you need help until after you've been cut, because the moment you start to say, I need help, a coach has to start thinking, is this somebody who I can throw the ball to the last play of the game to make something happen? Or is this someone when we're 4th and inches and they're in the trenches and I need to get that yard in order for us to move on to the next level of the playoffs? Is this someone who I can hang my hat on and trust in? It's a very strange dichotomy.
How did you get so smart? Because that's exactly what coaches think. How do you know this? You've been in this space for a long time, haven't you?
I've been around the block a few times.
Because I was going to say, you have to be on the team you have to be on the team with things coming out your mouth. You would have to be on the team to know that actually is true, guys. Everything that just came out of his mouth is exactly the reason why I was a liar when I was playing ball. Because I didn't want what he said to happen to me.
I mean, you think about it with anything. Like if you're running a business, are you going to trust somebody to run a project when you think that they're having issues and you don't know if you're going to be able to trust them with maybe a $2 million, $3 million project? And this is, something way bigger. The NFL is massive, billions of dollars. And you think about, can I trust somebody? There's this weird dichotomy where the athletes themselves, there's not a single athlete who's perfect. They're dealing with stuff every single day. It doesn't matter how large or small it is, there's something there. And in your case, you were dealing with a lot of different things, whether it was pills or kind of the thrill of the rush of gambling. Even if you come out low, it's kind of there's this sense of, I need to compete. I need to feel alive. I need to be doing something. I mean, and someone like Michael Jordan, that was one of the reasons why he gambled as much as he did, is because the love of competition, the love of the moment of, can I overcome the odds? And a lot of people, that's how they get into it. They feel like that's something that they can overcome. But I'm curious with some of those other things, like when you're going out to Vegas and you're doing all these things, but you're also having to balance all this other stuff. Are you just flying by the seat of your pants, or is there kind of a system that you have in place for yourself that keeps you going?
Actually, no, I was flying by the seat of my pants, and it was because, and again, guys, I'm a man of faith, and I was about everything about my flesh. So it was always just about trying to make myself feel good. And because of my CTE and my injuries, I would always just do things to try to get myself out of my brokenness that I grew up around because of the head trauma and the emotional things that I had to endure in life. And I was even struggling, even when I got close to the end of my career, thinking, what am I going to do now when my career is over with? So just to, really be transparent with you guys, I struggled throughout the 10 years of my NFL career. And at the end of my 10 years, I actually had a chance to sign another 3-year contract with the Broncos. And just like Antonio Brown, when he took his clothes off on the sidelines, playing for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and ran off the field, guess what Vance did? I just didn't show back up. And that's how I ended up not being a Bronco anymore. And so that's when they wouldn't re-sign me after I didn't show back up. And then a year later told them, well, okay, I'm willing to come back. And they said, Mr. Johnson, we had a date scheduled. You decided not to come back. And so you can't be a Bronco anymore.
Yeah. Accountability.
This is how transparent I am.
Accountability it's a hell of a reality check when people finally understand the power of true accountability, which a lot of people sometimes, it's that accountability that comes from when you're working with a team and they're like, we've given you time after time. And you see this with plenty of athletes. There are people who, are they going to show up? Oh, they're not showing up. They're not doing this, not doing that. It's finally when somebody says, hey, either show up and be accountable, or we can't be accountable with you any longer. And that's a much more powerful thing for a lot of athletes to start doing with themselves before a team has to start implementing accountability rules. Because if you're someone who's coming in as a free agent, you don't get accountability like warnings. You're either there or you're gone. Whereas if you're someone who has just signed a big deal with them, you signed your first contract with them, you got drafted by them, you may have a pinch of leeway, but it's dangerous because the first time you get a little bit of, hey, just don't do this again, whatever, they're going to do it again. It's going to happen. But there are people who don't get second chances. So when it comes to that self accountability, And this is something that, you know, the fact that you've been so transparent shows the amount of accountability that you have with yourself and the amount of accountability that you now hold with other people as well. A lot of people lean on you. How can athletes start being disciplined and accountable with themselves, especially when they're in their 20s? And I'm sorry, but you talk to any 20-year-old and the last thing they're thinking about is waking up and saying, how can I be hyper accountable for every single thing that I do today? And how can I make sure that I'm very disciplined in my pursuit of wanting to get exactly what I want? That's just not how the 20-year-old male brain has a tendency to kind of work on a daily basis. I've been there. It's difficult. You've been there. You know how difficult it can be too. What do these athletes need to start doing in order to be able to start tapping into that more?
You know, and I got to be real transparent, guys, because being clean now 9 years, and there are many roads to recovery. The things that I try to let fathers know, because I travel around the country sharing my testimony with a number of fathers. And in fact, I've gone to probably about maybe 12 different states this year just to share my testimony. I've been talking to a lot of youth. Is you have to know the direction you're going in your life, starting from childhood. And you have to have a good father, and I say a godly father, that's going to raise you the right way, so that you'll know that you have to have a foundation and not thinking somehow you're going to hopefully be successful one day, because eventually, even if you become successful, you're still going to be struggling with some certain things. So I want to always encourage mothers and fathers to raise their kids the right way so that their kids are educated, and always stay in contact with their kids too, even when they're in their 20s, so they can know that if they're going to be playing professional sports, that they need to do something that's going to show them how to learn to save their monies, to continue doing the things that they were doing when they were young, when they were kids. Because sometimes when you're a kid, you did the wrong thing, you got a spanking. And in the NFL, that means you get cut. So anyway, I'm going all over the place with this, but I just want to fast forward.
I love that. I absolutely love that, because parenting is such a huge piece of the puzzle. I mean,
it's the most important.
Absolutely. It's where kids learn how to do everything, right? It's what sets the baseline marker for someone's life is their parents, because kids are sponges. That's what they do. They witness they understand how relationships work from their parents. They understand how love works, how happiness works, how discipline works, how accountability works, everything, right? They all learn it from their parents first. And yes, you do get it from your circle of friends or acquaintances or any of that other stuff, but still there's that rock that a lot of athletes always have to come back to, which is their family. So
real quick.
Yes.
A circle of friends is important too, because I was around a circle of friends, and I won't mention those teammates, but we all were doing the wrong thing off the field, from going to strip clubs to having pornography things, and going to even my own house where I'd have women coming to be having sex with. This is how transparent I am, guys. And I'm talking about my own teammates, and I'm not going to mention any names. But even after their careers, they struggled. And some of us even had to help each other that would end up being homeless. So it starts at childhood, and that's the problem these days, especially. You don't have a lot of moms and dads that are raising their kids the right way. All they're doing is they're giving their kids a cell phone, and they're letting them be on the phone all night long, not even knowing that now all of a sudden that cell phone has become your child's identification. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's going to cause your kid, which I'm hearing in Colorado, because I've been reached out to about this, up to 40 kids are being hospitalized every single day from their drug addictions and even suicidal thoughts right there in Colorado. That's why I want to come back home, so I can offer some help and some hope to those kids and parents in Colorado.
Man, and that is and it's a tough pill to swallow if you're a parent and you know that your kid, or you don't know that your kid is struggling.
Right.
And number one, if you know your kid is struggling, it's very difficult as a parent to admit that your kid is struggling, and that your style of parenting has helped lead to this, if not is the entirety of the cause of it. Now, obviously there are some things that are just based off of, a kid's, whether it's their personality type or just predisposition or influences and other stuff that parents don't control. But there's a huge chunk of it that is controlled by parents. And it is a very, very difficult pill to swallow. Same thing with an athlete. If you know that you are struggling, but you have to have a conversation and you have to go out of your way to do this, what is the mindset switch that you went through that allowed you to finally start asking for help, rather than this is just who I am, this is what I do? And I mean, for lack of better terms, you stop making excuses for yourself.
This is my mindset switch. So now here I am in my 7th marriage after my career was over with. I had abandoned all of my kids. I found out that they were being sexually molested by their mother's boyfriends, some of them by their mother's fathers were having sex with some of my kids.
Jeez.
One of my kids came across the mountain there when I was living on the foothills there in Colorado and went to college. His name is Vaughn. And my son reached out to me and I put him in college. He eventually reached out to me because his dad just died of cancer. And I was struggling with my addiction and still being a whore and separated from my 7th ex-wife at the time. And my son tried to give me a call, and I decided not to answer his call because I was high and also with another woman. And my son's car broke down, so he had to take his motorcycle. And this is on the front page of the Denver Post. He got killed that very night. Well, I started to just go crazy in my mind because it was my fault that my son died. And so I leaned even more on my addictions. I didn't have a relationship with my family, my parents at the time, none of my kids. And I ended up calling my mother. And she actually ended up picking me up and taking me to the hospital where I OD'd and was induced into a 28-day coma. On day 24, they told my family to come say goodbye. And I'm welcome to send that photo to you. And they came out and took a deathbed picture of me. And my mother told the doctor, God's not done with my son yet. On day 28, my eyes opened. I had an outer body experience when I was in my coma. I saw 2 of my 7 ex-wives visit me when I was in the coma. And I saw 2 different pastors and their names visit me and pray over me. And I even asked the doctors and my mother and my father, and they said, Mr. Johnson, when you were in that coma, those 2 out of your 7 ex-wives came and say goodbye to you. And those 2 pastors who you've never even met, but you mentioned their names, came to visit you. How do you know that when you were in a coma dying? I said, obviously it was a spirit inside of me saw them. So that's why I share with people that there is a spirit that lives inside of us. And that spirit person has eternity waiting for it. So when I got out of the hospital, I ended up screaming and crying out to God one day to save me because I had relapsed. And that's when all of a sudden a former Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and I'd love for you to interview him, Randy Grimes, was contacted by the NFL because my 7th ex-wife, after we hadn't been together for 11 months, felt like the Lord was telling her, Vance needs help. And so Randy Grimes did an intervention on me. And that's when I surrendered and went to treatment. And when I went to treatment, I started to just really be transparent after I heard a voice inside of my head that told me I needed to stay. And I made a promise to my therapist. And the very other thing I did was they started taking me to church, and I just started leaning all my spiritual believings in my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And that's when I realized that our Savior's nailed all the sins and addictions to the cross. And the promise for the rest of my life, I was going to travel this country and go back to Colorado and here in Arizona to just offer the hope and get people into treatment everywhere I can. So it's not about Vance anymore. It's about everybody else.
Yeah. Man, number one, that story alone and everything that you've been through, it's incredibly heavy. It's a lot for any individual to have to experience through. But the fact that you have leaned so much on your faith it lightens that load. It lightens that burden. And I'm a man of faith as well. And I fully believe that, whether you're someone who believes in God or the universe or just, even energy or something like that, faith can turn the tables for a lot of people, because faith in something greater than yourself is great for a number of different things. Number one, it allows you to believe in something that will never fail, right? That it's the belief that there is something out there and it is perfect, and that you are allowed to not be. And so many people beat themselves up for not being perfect to whatever standards that they're trying to hold. But when you have faith in something that's greater than yourself, for some people, that being God, for myself being God, God's perfect in every single way. And so for me, it makes it a lot easier to understand that I'm a man, I'm flawed. It is what it is. And my job at that point is to try and find ways to emulate what God wants for me and be able to be a tool and have him work through me in order to help other people. And I get to set a much more powerful intention in everything that I do, rather than feeling like I'm flying by the seat of my pants. It gives me a set number of general disciplines that allow me to practice a powerful lifestyle on a daily basis. For some people, they want to use the 10 commandments. For some people, they want to use, other types of things, whatever those rules might be. Doesn't matter what type of religion you're a part of. There's usually some base set of quote unquote rules or disciplines that make it easy for someone to live a powerful lifestyle and live a positive lifestyle. And it sounds like that has been something that has absolutely changed the tables and really the whole trajectory of your life.
And that's the reason why God's word says that in this world, you will have trials, you will have tribulations, you will have hard times, you will go through all these different things. But he said, I have overcome the world. So those who believe in me, I am the truth and the way and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That's the reason why I don't judge other people, but I'm a man of God and Jesus Christ is my savior.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why now I don't struggle anymore. But even when I have thoughts in my mind, I don't lean on my own flesh, but every word of God. And so that's why I go out to try to share everybody the hope that there's a way, and my way is my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I lead people all the time. And I've been running into people here in Tucson, Arizona that I grew up in and around, that I've been sharing my testimony with hundreds of them. And they said, Vance, I wanted to be like you because you and I played football against each other. And here I am now, the same age as you, in a drug and alcohol treatment program, thinking, you know what, if I'd have been like Vance, I'd have been famous. But now I can see that you went through the very same things I went through as a child. And so you're no different than I am.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? And that's why we're brothers and we're on the same team now.
Oh, 100%. Anybody who's ever been an athlete or really has gone through life, we all deal with the same baseline challenges: fear, anxiety, stress, tiredness, kind of that whole illusion of choice of, oh, I can either do what it takes to be really great, or I can try and do it my own way. And then you wind up floundering for a long period of time.
Yeah.
We all deal with it. Every single person, like that's what binds us together as human beings are those common challenges that we all face. Now, the scenarios in which we face them are all completely unique, but the underlying thing is always going to be the same that we're all dealing with here. And it's, I mean, from a faith standpoint, it has just been amazing to hear how much you're living some of these things. And there are a lot of, there are some athletes who they start believing in God when they need to, after they just got their bell rung on a crossing route, and are just like, I need Jesus to get through this game. And that might be the first time that they've ever met him. But then there are other people who are raised that way, and they meet him in a much easier circumstance.
You know what, real quick, let me cut you off for a second, because you just reminded me of something. Because I was watching an interview that I had when I was the Three Amigos, and I had a cross hanging on my ear. Because guess what? Back in the day, I was using Jesus as a slot machine. So it was only because I wanted to use him so that I could have what I wanted, not even realizing that I'm actually not supposed to be using him, but I'm supposed to be used by him. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that a lot of, people pray for success, or they pray to be great. And in order to get there, God says, awesome, I love that you're striving for so much. In order to be great, you have to overcome things that then turn you into someone who is great, and then puts these big challenges into your life that if you don't overcome them, you won't be great. But if you overcome them through faith within him, you will be great.
That's exactly right.
So
because you're going to be used by him. Now, then that also means that you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be coming at you, that are going to be trying to take you out, because they're going to hate that you're helping so many people.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You know what he said though? Love them too.
Yep. Absolutely. You
because he said, I love the world so much that I gave my only begotten son.
Absolutely. And from a football standpoint, right? Like if you say, I want to be the best wide receiver in the entire NFL, I want to be the best that has ever been. Cool. Well, guess what? God's going to make sure you're lined up with the best cornerbacks anyone has ever faced in your entire career. And there are going to be times where they're going to embarrass you. And there are going to be times where you are struggling, but in order to be the best wide receiver, you have to beat the best, which means you have to welcome competition at that point. You can't be dunking on kids who are like 3 feet tall and call yourself, Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem. No, you got to beat the best in order to be the best.
That's right. Hey, real quick. So who were some of the defensive backs? And I'm trying to remember the names, because something happened out at the Raiders Stadium just about a year and a half ago when I was out there. There was a defensive back that played with the Raiders that used to come out, and he would grab me in the first part of the game. And every time that the ball was on the other side of the field, he would start scratching my eyes so that I couldn't see the ball when John threw to me. And he apologized to me at the Raiders Stadium a year and a half ago. I'm trying to remember who it was now. Oh man, it'll come back to me hopefully.
And that happens. See that, and that's another sign of those times, right? Like you see guys getting scuffles, trying to get the upper hand, and do all that other stuff. But it's just it was a different era. You have guys who are twisting ankles, poking eyes, choking each other out at the bottom of piles. And it was just because it was just a different game. It wasn't monitored as closely as it is now, mainly because you don't have the eyes in the sky back then that you do now. And
Right.
nowadays everybody's watched on every single thing that they do. And
Oh yeah.
it's amazing.
Do you know how you know how the Amigos, the Three Amigos got started back in the day?
I need to hear the origin story.
Okay. So I was drafted second pick in the second round, which would have been first round now because they added a couple more teams to the NFL. And so here I am, a Denver Bronco. And all of a sudden they draft this 6th or 7th round guy by the name of Mark Jackson. So because I got drafted higher than him, I took him under my wing and we became really good friends. And then I found out they were drafting Ricky Nattil in the first round. And I was so pissed off that I called the media out and said, if they're going to draft Ricky Nattil in the first round, time me in the 40 meters, and that way he'll see that I'm better than him when he gets here if he can try to run it faster than me. And I told Mark, you better not be friends with Ricky, otherwise I'm going to kick your, I don't cuss anymore, guys. I'm going to kick your so-and-so. And we were roommates. Well, I found out that behind the scenes, Mark and Ricky became friends, and so I got pissed off, and I used to cuss Mark Jackson out. Well, one night I'm watching a movie called The Three Amigos, and I thought in my mind, you know what? Maybe me and Mark and Ricky need to be the Three Amigos. So I went to Mark Jackson's room, and I knocked on his door. We were roommates, and he had a second room inside of our dorm room. And he said, "What the hell do you want?" And I said, "Mark, I got a really good idea, man. Why don't me, you, and Ricky be the Three Amigos?" He said, "What? They might think the three white guys can be Three Amigos, but not three Nick." I almost said it. So I said, "Yes, they will. I promise you. I'm gonna tell them that John Elway said it." So the very next day, at the end of practice, they always come out and interview us. And I told the media that John Elway called me, Mark, and Ricky the Three Amigos. And so they ran up to John and said, "You called Mark and Vance and Ricky the Three Amigos?" He said, "What? No, I didn't call them the Three Amigos. Maybe the three midgets. They all under 6 feet tall." Oh, but guess what? It was on the front page the next day that John Elway called us the Three Amigos. And that's how me, Mark, and Ricky became friends to this day.
Isn't it wild how stuff like that just happens? And the thing is, there are like 12 different ways that you could have presented that to the media, but you chose the one where you're just like, let's use the golden boy here. And and it'll probably stick. I absolutely love that. Oh my gosh. Man, I want to move into some of the work that you're doing right now, and obviously give you an opportunity to share some of the things you're doing right now, how people who are struggling can find resources, get help, maybe even get in touch with the services and the work that you are doing. And obviously dive into this book a little bit, right? Your new book, Uncovered, which you've been hyper transparent, which before we get into it, I have to call this out. So many athletes, and any athlete who's listening to this, don't lie. Athletes try to present themselves as bulletproof in everything that they do. Why? Because we talked about this earlier. If a coach feels like you are slightly off, they're going to start questioning if they can trust you. And then at some point, you're going to get cut. Athletes feel like they have to come off as bulletproof, but people who are actually bulletproof are the ones who are hyper transparent, who have nothing to hide. Those are the people who are actually bulletproof. Why? Because you have completely exposed every single part of your life, that there is nothing left for other people to hold or leverage over you. Don't believe me? Go watch the final scene in 8 Mile where Eminem goes into that rap battle and all he does is expose every part of his life. What does it do? It leaves the other guy speechless. He can't do anything. It disarms everybody who has ever had a single doubt or anything about him. And now we all know where Eminem stands at now, right? That's when you can embrace a sense of transparency in your life, it actually makes you stronger. So I have to commend you on how transparent you've been this entire conversation. It has been nothing short of an honor so far. I do want to go into some of the work that obviously you're doing now, the book a little bit. So I know I did a little bit of an introduction of the book and kind of the, your struggle with addiction, your journey to sobriety and kind of life afterwards. But tell me a little bit more about kind of this book and some of the things that you cover as readers are going through it and where people can even find it.
Well, I would really encourage people to just either reach out to me in person at my vanceinspires.org website, where not only do I have an email address, but I even have a phone number that you can reach out to me, and I'll be sure to call you back. And people are reaching out to me from all over the country. Again, that's vanceinspires.org. And on there, you can actually go and pick up my book too. And my book actually is just so transparent, guys, that I literally, everything that we've talked about just now, it's all starting from my childhood all the way to today, where I talk about my entire journey of my life. And I show biblically how God really freed me from the bondage of all the things that I suffered and went through in my life. So I'm really transparent in that book. And it goes even deeper than the conversation that we had just now. Also on my Facebook, I'm really transparent there too. I do videos and different things because a lot of us just post things that we want people to see so we can get likes. But I actually post things that are very transparent, even when I'm tempted behind the scenes. So I would really encourage people to reach out, even if they want someone that needs to get into treatment, because I help people up in Colorado all the time. And if people can't come to the program that I'm the ambassador at here in Colorado, in Arizona rather, I get them into a treatment program up there in Colorado. So whether it's Ohio or New Jersey or down in Florida or out in California, people reach out to me almost on a daily basis. I would be really interested in talking to a loved one in that former Denver Bronco, encouraging your loved one to get into treatment if they need any help. So please reach out to me.
I love it. I love it. Now, once again, that's vanceinspires.org. There will be a link to that on this episode. I'll make sure that it's there. So if you haven't gone and looked at the description of this podcast episode, if you're watching us on YouTube, go check out the description here. It's vanceinspires.org. Now, is that the same place people can go if they are starting to struggle and they know that they need help and they want to reach out? Is that the same place that they can go?
Yes, the very same place, vanceinspires.org. You can go to that website. And actually, the program that I work at is on there. You can go and look at the information that's provided on there. And again, you can reach out to me if that program specifically doesn't fit down here in Arizona, then I can help you find a program right there in Colorado or wherever you are to get your loved ones into treatment.
I love it. I love it. And Vance, once again, I have to say this has been an amazing, amazing conversation. I mean, I work a lot on, obviously, as a performance mindset coach, I work a lot on the side where people are, hey, I'm here, I want to do something better. But there are so many people who are struggling and aren't even in a functional state and they need help. And so it always such a big eye opener for me. And always such a pleasure and an honor for me to talk to someone who helps that other side of the fence, the athletes who are not in a position where they're going to be able to thrive working with a coach, because there's some things that they have to work through in their own life in order to be able to then be open to a lot of that stuff. It has been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you. I'm super excited to, obviously learn more about what you're doing and follow what you're doing and see some of these success stories, and obviously continue to engage with you and obviously dive into this book. It is going to be an absolute treat for me to be able to read this stuff. And I already know right now, from some of the stuff that you said, how transparent you are, there's going to be tears, 100%. I'm a very empathetic person. I'm going to go through it, and it's going to be life-changing for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Just to learn some of your story and everything that you've been through. And any athlete out there who is in a position where you feel like there is something you have to do, something you have to say in order to be able to move forward in your life. The reason you want to be in touch with Vance and the work that he and his organization are doing is because Vance has been there. He's not only been there, but he has been to some of the deepest, darkest places that a lot of people have ever been involved in as a human being. So, and even with that, you can hear the tone of voice and the man that he is right now, and it's a beautiful thing. So all I can really do is say thank you.
I sure appreciate that, man. And guess what I'm getting ready to do? I'm getting ready to jump back on the playing field, because this is the playing field that I play on 24 hours a day. I just want to go offer the hope and help the people. So that's why I take everything back to my career, because when you're on the playing field, you got to run the right place so that you can have victory, right? And this is what I do now in this space. I just go out back to the playing field, and that's offering hope and help the people, which I'll be doing as soon as I get off the phone with you.
I love it. Well, I won't keep you from it. Go out there, keep changing lives. This has been incredible. I love and appreciate everything that you are. You're an absolutely beautiful soul. And I look forward to being in touch and staying in connection with you as time goes on.
All right. Well, thank you for being one of the best interviewers that I've talked to, man. Thank you so much. It was good meeting you.
Oh, man, I'm going to be blushing now the whole rest of the day. I appreciate it, Vance.
Touchdown.
This is my Super Bowl right now. This is for today. This is the Super Bowl for the day. I love it. I appreciate you, man. And I hope you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
All right. God bless you.
God bless.